Oh my goodness, check it out. I caught a demon on video. Whoa. It just disappeared.
Neredesin küçük kız? Seni bulamıyorum. Neredesin?
Miss Mackenzie set up a motion-activated camera at her son's house after complaints his 2-year-old...
But we're gonna look at them because
You're
why
gonna see
not?
We're starting off with a very harrowing image right off the bat. A red-eyed demon lady staring into a dude's car. Just take a look at this nightmare fuel. The creepiest thing about this video is that the woman just does not move an inch. She just stares wide-eyed into the car, completely frozen the whole time. I don't know. This one just kind of got under my skin a little bit. At one point I actually started like averting my eyes from the screen just to avoid her glare. I also didn't know if there's gonna be some kind of a pop-up scare of some kind. Her face is hard to read. She's kind of doing this blank, dead-eyed, like 1,000-yard stare, and because you can't make out any emotion on her face, just makes the whole thing even more unsettling. Of course, it could totally be a hoax, but I do find this one pretty effectively freaky. The red, unblinking eyes, the fact that she looks like she's covered in mud, it's just very strange. If anyone knows more about this video, please let me know down in the comments.
Next up, we have an image of an institutionalized woman taken in the 1900s, committed in France at a time when mental health was incredibly misunderstood and people suffering from epilepsy were often seen as being possessed by the devil. It's unclear what the woman in the photo suffered from or why she was imprisoned in the French institution in which the photo was taken, but what is clear is the fact that when the photo was taken, she had been forcibly restrained at the feet, by the wrists, and around the waist, a common practice for those suffering from delusions or fits at the time. For me personally, what stands out most about this photo, taken at a time in which demons were to blame for the majority of mental ailments, is that her body is positioned in the image of a cross. Whether or not this was directly intentional is unknown, but spooky nonetheless, not to mention super unethical.
Next on the list, we have this video of a goat walking on its hind legs. This video has been reposted like so many times, so I'm not exactly sure who the original uploader is. I think it's Youngstar TV. Anyway, the short clip shows a goat walking on its hind legs into a barn, being followed close behind by a chicken. Some people find this clip kind of funny. The folks behind the camera are chuckling. I'd definitely be entertained if I were, visiting that farm, but if I were the farmer, I'd probably be keeping my eye on that goat from that point on. I'd probably laugh at first, but that laugh would probably disintegrate into an uncomfortable chuckle as soon as I realized that Baphomet was living right outside where I slept. And who the hell knows what it's thinking and planning? A chicken was following close behind him. Was this goat gathering farm animals together to stage a coup? Start leading a chicken army to take over the farm? Animals walking around like humans without being instructed to just gives me the creeps. Like, when you see videos of like dogs just walking on their hind legs, it's not right. It doesn't look right. It's like, no, stop that, please.
Next up, human dolls. It really doesn't get much more demonic than this. These lifelike dolls were created by a man named Anatoly Moskvin, a former Russian journalist who, let's face it, was absolutely bat crazy. Oh, and when I say these dolls were lifelike, I mean it. Why? Well, because they were made of human flesh. Anyways, Moskvin was also a self-proclaimed grave expert, and he spent many years digging up the bodies of young women to use for his sick art projects. Each doll he made was carefully kept inside his home. He thought of them as both companions and lovers, and even admitted to engaging in physical contact with the creations in his writings. For many years, Moskvin and his deranged projects flew under the radar, but he was eventually caught in 2011 after police grew suspicious of the rising number of desecrated graves in the area. When officials searched the home of Moskvin, they found 26 life-size dolls, which were basically just mummified corpses laid out around the man's home like they were living there. I guess you could argue that what he did isn't technically demonic, but it's for sure demented.
This next video is taken in Mexico at a church. The priest was in the middle of leading a sermon when suddenly you hear this loud, distressed scream coming from somewhere. Take a listen.
El Señor esté con ustedes y con tu espíritu.
Now, it's hard to make out what the voice is saying, especially because I don't speak Spanish. Some people have said it sounds like a woman screaming, "Please help." Now, there's not a ton of info behind this clip, but apparently the priest immediately stopped the sermon after that. Even in the short clip, you see him step down from the podium as his voice kind of like trails off. He seems pretty unsettled. And I mean, fair enough. Ghostly screams echoing through a church is probably gonna throw off your rhythm just a little bit. Take a look at this nightmarish monstrosity. Gotta say, guy in a costume or not, I do not like this, and I would not like running into it in the dark, in the day, inside, outside, just no thank you all around. This video was posted to TikTok by Fastby Tess Horror with a description reading, "Muslim traveler finds himself face to face with a monstrous creature lurking in the shadows." We don't have a lot of context for this footage, just that the guy behind the camera supposedly came across this gargoyle-looking thing leering down at him from a ledge, and the man, completely shaken and petrified, started praying. And you can hear the terror in his voice as he does so. I find this thing deeply unsettling. This is what I kind of picture a genuine demonic creature looking like, although a lot of commenters say it looks like Frank from Donnie Darko, which, I mean, you know what, hey, that doesn't take anything away from it, still makes this creepy as hell. A man named Cody had started noticing odd things going on in his house one day, so he pulled out his phone and started recording. He'd noticed the light in the fridge and bathroom flickering. He also heard water running, so he peeked around the corner of the bathroom and, to his complete shock and confusion, found that the bathroom sink was on. And when a door behind him suddenly shut on its own, he really got freaked out and decided to step outside. He rang up his girlfriend, who urged him to just stay out of the house. Either there was an intruder or something else was going on, but none of it could be good. But Cody went back in to keep filming anyway, and suddenly found the place was a complete mess. Chairs had been knocked over, cupboards were open, so he immediately changed his mind and rightfully left the house again. And 2 hours later, he went back in, took a look in every single room to see if there's anyone there. He didn't find anything. That is, until he went back and looked at the footage that he'd taken later on. While he'd been filming his kitchen after having come back into the house that first time, he'd briefly panned across to his daughter's doorway. But while watching the footage back, he noticed something in the top right-hand corner, so he paused and zoomed in, revealing this. A ghostly-looking face peering out from above the doorway. This chilled him to the bone, and it's easy to see why. There are some very dubious ghost videos and pictures out there, blurry, often hard to make out, but this looks legitimately terrifying. It's clearly a face, but it does not look human. Speaking of creepy as hell, be glad you don't live in the same building as this next guy. In this short clip, we see a man filming a staircase, lit up by the light from his phone. On the stairs is a man rushing up to the camera. Clearly his intentions aren't good. Either he's just trying to freak out our cameraman, or he's got something worse in mind. Luckily, the cameraman manages to shut the door before the crazed guy manages to get too close, but then, for whatever reason, he decides to open the door back up again to see if the dude's still there, I guess, and it doesn't look like it at first. You know, all we see is the dark, empty stairwell, but in true horror movie fashion, just as the camera peeks around the corner, we get this. It's immediately clear that there is something very wrong with this guy's eyes. Was this dude on something? Is the video just a hoax? Or was this man possessed by a demon or a djinn? Talk about a demon realizing they're being filmed. This thing is right up close, staring directly into this person's car. Take a look. Would you just sit there continuing to film this, or would you be tearing out of there? I know what camp I'm in. I'd be gone. Those are not the eyes of someone who needs directions or wants to be friendly in any way. Those are the eyes of someone whose mouth is about to stretch 3 times its normal size and devour your face in a single chomp. She's almost still as a statue, completely unblinking, which is really what makes the whole thing so downright chilling. But take note of her eyes. Just ever so slightly shifting to the person behind the camera. It's such a slight little movement, but just sends shivers up your spine. The fact that she looks so dead-eyed, just staring off into the distance, and then slowly switches to look right down the barrel of the camera, right at us as the viewers. It's just hard not to avert your eyes a little bit.
Number 10. Royal Air Force Squadron. This photo, taken in 1919, was first published in 1975 by Sir Victor Goddard, a retired RFA officer. The photo is a group portrait of Victor's squadron, which had served in World War I at the HMS Daedalus training facility. This isn't a normal photo though, as an extra ghostly face appears in the photo. In the back of the airman positioned on the top row, fourth from the left, you can clearly see the face of another man. It's said to be the face of Freddie Jackson, an air mechanic who had accidentally died from an airplane propeller 2 days earlier. And let me just mention, his funeral had taken place on the day this photograph was taken. Members of the squadron easily recognized the face as Freddie's. I mean, it was his funeral, he just wanted to be a part of the photo. It has also been suggested that Freddie, unaware of his death, decided to show up for the group photo, which is just sad. Number 9. Combremere Abbey Library. In 1891, Cybele Corbett took a photo of the Combremere Abbey Library in Cheshire, England. Cybele was an amateur photographer who allegedly set up her camera and took this hour-long exposure while at the funeral of her brother-in-law, Lord Combremere, was taking place 4 miles from the home. When the plate was developed, the transparent image of a man sitting in one of the library chairs was noticed. Many of the staff said the image looked like the late second Viscount, and the apparition happened to be sitting in Lord Combramere's favorite chair. So, you know, it's obviously him. It's thought by some that a servant might have come into the room and sat briefly in the chair, thus creating the image, but this idea was refuted by members of Lord Combramere's household. Lord Combramere's father, the first Viscount, had been involved in a mysterious incident himself years earlier while serving as governor of Barbados, when he had the Chase vault opened and carefully examined in search of an explanation for the moving coffins there. Seems like him and his father have both had some paranormal experiences, both in life and death. Number 8. The Watcher of Corroboree Rock. The rock formation near Alice Springs, Australia, known as Corroboree Rock, is made of dolomite that was formed more than 800 million years ago, and it's considered a sacred site by the Arrernte Aboriginal people. With that much history behind it and that much importance assigned to it, it makes sense that there's someone or something that looks over it. That's why the spirit is called the Watcher of Corroboree Rock. Now, no one really knows exactly who or what it is, but one photo of it dates back to the 1950s. In either 1956 or 1959, reports vary, a minister from Adelaide snapped the photo during a visit to the rock formation, and it's been puzzling people ever since. According to the minister, Reverend R. Lance, there was no one around when the photograph was taken, however, but when he developed it, the ghostly figure now seen in the image appeared. It's kind of nice to know that there's something taking care and watching over that area, no? Number 7. Leeds General Infirmary. Now, why wouldn't there be a creepy ghost photo taken in a hospital? With many patients' lives ending and beginning there, those places are full of spirits. Now, this photo isn't an extremely well-known ghost photo, but it's still creepy nonetheless. This photo was taken at Leeds General Infirmary by Andrew Milburn. The photo shows what appears to be a ghost nurse or patient fleeing into a room in a hospital corridor. Andrew took the photo to show his girlfriend where he was in the hospital and did not mean to capture a ghost. He didn't know this ghost was in the photo until he reviewed it more closely. Andrew had always been skeptical about ghosts, but seeing this figure changed his mind, and honestly, that would change my mind too. Number 6. Whaley House. Known worldwide as the most haunted house in America, the Whaley House is recognized for its historical significance in Old Town San Diego. They do haunted tours on the property, and this family went on a tour and got their photo taken. In the photo, you can see the brown outline of someone or something in between the two adults. Now, there are multiple people this could be. One of the most infamous ghosts in San Diego is the spirit of Yankee Jim Robinson. Yankee Jim was hanged in the house in 1852 after being convicted of stealing horses. Thomas Whaley himself, who owned and lived in the house with his family years later, had said they could hear heavy footsteps going up and down the stairs. Visitors have reported cold spots and the feeling of their chest and throat tightening while in the home. Others claim to have seen Yankee Jim too, and apparition that appears and disappears when you get close. This ghost in the photo could also be Thomas Whaley himself. Today and for many years, visitors of the house have reported seeing Thomas. One guest waved to a man she said she saw standing in the parlor. No one else could see the man, but when asked what he looked like, she described a man wearing period clothing that resembled Thomas. Adults too have seen him wearing a frock coat and pantaloons standing on the second-story landing, and others have seen his wife, Anna, usually floating about in the garden or in the downstairs room. Her ghost, which appears white and billowy, seems to just drift about and then disappears. So with so much ghost activity in that house, I am sure it's one of those spirits. Number 10. Legion. Jesus encounters a possessed man and calls on the demon to emerge, demanding to know its name, which is an important element of traditional exorcism practice. He finds the man is possessed by a multitude of demons who give the collective name of Legion. So yeah, this demon is made of countless evil spirits able to incarnate into a physical body or separate into their respective forms at will. While the types of demons that make up Legion is unknown, they are said to be the same kind of demon that would inhabit a host and would have a single hive mind. Speaking of which, the demons of Legion do act like a hive mind, always speaking in unison and always knowing what the other demon is thinking and preparing to do. Legion appears as a floating sphere that is protected by an outer shell composed of massive innumerable humanoid bodies. This enormous lump of flesh conceals an inner core whose identity can vary. Legion, when possessing a human body, begins to torture the psychological person, making them have depressive and negative thoughts to erase any desire of life from its hosts. Their attitude of possessing human bodies is seen as a horrible act to most angels, as it deprives humans of their only weapon, free will. Number 9. Furfur. Furfur, also known as Furcifer, is a demon who is said to be the Count of Hell, leading 26 legions. He speaks in a hoarse voice, has a fiery tail, and usually appears as a stag. He is said to be able to make men and women fall in love and also has command over great storms. He gives true answers to all things past, present, and future, but he must first be commanded to enter a magic triangle, for if not, he will lie and deceive the conjurer. But if he enters the triangle, he will answer truly and gladly speak about divinity, the creation of the world, himself, and other fallen angels. He can also destroy all the conjurer's enemies by burning them up. And if the magician requests it, he will not suffer temptations from any spirit or in any form. Furfur can also supposedly be called upon when a mortal wishes to take vengeance on other demons. This is likely included in his capability to destroy the conjurer's enemies. And I just gotta say, how scary can a demon be if its name is literally Furfur? It sounds like a name someone would give their cat. Number 8. Beelzebub. Beelzebub is a former Seraphian turned into high-ranking demon who is considered one of the 7 princes of hell and oversees the Order of the Fly. In Catholic demonology, he is sometimes considered to be one of the first 3 angels to fall from heaven, along with Lucifer and Leviathan. He is also often confused with Satan, and the 2 names can be interchanged. However, strictly speaking, they are 2 separate entities. Beelzebub is the chief lieutenant of Lucifer and is one of the most loyal. He is commonly described as placed high in the hierarchy of hell and is seen as being associated with envy. He is also the prince of false gods, and flies play a large focus in imagery detailing him. The malignant spirit can even take the form of flies, according to some. I mean, ever heard of Lord of the Flies? Yup, that's him. Number 7. Mammon. Mammon in the New Testament of the Bible is commonly thought to mean money, material wealth, or an entity that promises wealth and is associated with the greedy pursuit of gain. After the rebellion in heaven, Mammon was banished to hell, where he is the one who finds underground precious metals that his demonic companions used to build their capital city, Pandemonium, by Lucifer's order. Mammon counsels the devils to be happy with what they've got and to create a home for themselves in hell. He is one of the 7 princes of hell, each representing the 7 deadly sins. Mammon represents greed and is known as the treasurer of hell, and was said to have had dealings with the Greek deity Zeus. It is thought that when you make a deal with the devil for wealth and fame, you are making it with Mammon. Number 6. Belphegor. Belphegor is a demon lord that resides over the sin of sloth and is one of the 7 princes that rules hell. He also assists people to make discoveries. For example, he seduces people by suggesting to them ingenious inventions that will make them rich and they wouldn't have to work hard for it. As one of the fallen angels, Belphegor was originally a member of the Order of the Principalities, and after his fall, he became a demonic counterpart to one of the 10 Sephiroth that oversee the Tree of Life. He is the biblical enemy of the 6th Sephiroth, the patron angel of beauty. It's said that if Belphegor were to become too influential in the world, then the beauty of it all would become tainted, causing ruination.
And we are starting off this list with the ghost of Worstead Church. So back in August of 1975, there's this guy named Peter Bertholdt, just your average Joe, right? He's out with his family taking a stroll around the church of St. Mary's in Norfolk. Nothing unusual, just a family day out. Peter's got his camera, it snaps a picture of his wife Diane sitting on a church bench, deep in prayer mode. Seems pretty ordinary. Peter, being the typical family man, claims there was absolutely nobody behind his wife when he took that picture. Fast forward a few months, they're hanging out with some friends, showing off their holiday slides, and boom, one of their friends points at a photo and asks, "Hey Diane, who's that sitting behind you?" Cue the collective confusion. Peter and Diane squint at the photo, and lo and behold, there's this white figure lurking behind Diane, almost like a woman in an old-fashioned bonnet. Now, they're not exactly the type to jump to ghostly conclusions, but when they saw that eerie figure on the projector screen, they were a little bit disturbed. They decide to investigate, take the photo back to the church. The local vicar, always up for a good ghost story, tells them about the legend of the White Lady. Apparently, she's this ghostly woman who pops up when people need healing. And at the time that photo was taken, Diane was dealing with some health problems and was on antibiotics. Coincidence? Maybe. Spooky? Definitely. At our number 9 spot, we have the Madonna of Bachelor's Grove. So it's 1991. Judy Fells, a former member of the Ghost Research Society, decided to check out the infamous Bachelor's Grove Cemetery in Illinois. Armed with a camera, she started snapping pictures, thinking she was alone in the graveyard. Little did she know, she wasn't. When the photos developed, Judy spotted something bizarre. There, on one of the gravestones, was a woman. Shown in this picture here. She appeared relaxed, slightly leaning forward as if gently rocking. Judy hadn't seen anyone while she was taking the pictures. Reports of this woman in white date back to the 70s. She's not your typical ghost either. Sometimes she's seen alone, just chilling on a tombstone. Other times she's holding something that many over the years have believed to be a baby. And it's not just in that one spot that her ghost is spotted. People claim to have seen her all around the graveyard. Next on the list is the photograph of the Wem ghost. So our story begins in the small town of Wem in England. In 1995, a terrible fire ravaged a building in town, destroying it completely. What caught everyone's attention, though, was a photo taken by local resident Tony O'Reilly during the fire. The picture captured a young girl standing amidst the flames, seemingly unharmed. The witnesses claimed there was no girl at the scene. No living girl, that is. Some said the ghostly figure looked a lot like a girl who died in a fire at the same spot in 1677. Her name was Jane Churn. According to legend, her ghost occasionally appeared in the town. Experts examined the photograph, attempting to debunk it, but there was no conclusive evidence. Tony O'Reilly, the man behind the lens, was said to be a straightforward and honest guy. He insisted that he hadn't noticed the ghostly figure when he took the photo and that he hadn't doctored it whatsoever. Number 7, the Brown Lady of Rynham Hall. Back in 1936, Captain Hubert C. Provand snapped a pic in Rynham Hall, Norfolk. It would go on to be one of the most well-known ghost photographs of all time. He happened to capture the ghostly figure of an entity known as the Brown Lady. According to the story, she's Lady Dorothy Walpole, a woman who got the short end of the stick back in the 18th century. She had an affair, hubby found out, decided to lock her away in a dark corner of the mansion. She got hit with smallpox in 1726 and died a pretty miserable death. Visitors and staff at Rynham Hall have claimed to bump into this ghostly lady over the years. Some hear her footsteps like she's climbing the stairs. Others feel a sudden chill even when it's warm. And then there are those who swear they've seen her, the full-blown ghostly apparition, something like in this photograph here. Next, we have the famous Newby Church ghost photo. Back in 1963, a reverend named Kenneth F. Lord was snapping pictures inside the Church of Christ the Consoler, located at Newby Hall in North Yorkshire, UK. And as he snapped away, nothing seemed out of the ordinary at first, but fast forward to when he develops the film, and there's this bizarre photo showing up. In the picture, clear as day, there's this semi-translucent, almost monk-like figure just hanging out at the church altar. Again, Reverend Lord claimed he was all by himself in the church when he took the shot. No one else was around, so who the heck was this phantom monk? Totally baffled, Reverend Lord decided to get some experts involved. They checked out the photo and swore up and down that it hadn't been messed with. As to who these experts were, that info is not really known. There's a good chance these supposed experts were of the self-proclaimed variety, but creepy picture regardless. Auckland Abbey is a 700-year-old house. It was built on the site of a former abbey, which was sold to Sir Francis Drake after he returned from his circumnavigation of the globe in 1580. But while Francis was a national hero, locals believed that he had only defeated the Spanish Armada because he'd made a pact with the devil. Sir Francis Drake's ghost is believed to ride across Dartmoor in a black coach driven by headless horses led by 12 chattering goblins and pursued by a pack of baying dogs. That is the most metal thing I've ever heard. But it's also kind of terrifying. It's also said that any living dog that hears the spectral hound is said to die instantly. So that's kind of sad. I'd veer away from this place if you have a dog. Egg Hill Church is one of the most haunted churches out there. Legend has it that the crazy pastor of the Egg Hill Church ended the lives of all of his parishioners post-communion, and soon after hanged himself and died as well. Because of this, visitors have reported hearing the cries of victims that died at the hands of the pastor, even though the building remains locked and empty. That wasn't enough. Word has it that the abandoned church and its premises are vandalized and haunted by ghosts. But the interesting thing is, Egg Hill Church did reportedly bear witness to a strange miracle. According to a story, a tornado struck the area during a camp meeting near the church, damaging trees and snapping branches all around. But the tents and the trees at the camp remained intact as people kneeled and prayed during the storm. So could these spirits who are locked inside the church have helped these folks? Who knows? Located in the French Quarter of New Orleans, St. Louis Cathedral is the oldest cathedral in the United States still in use. The first version was constructed in 1718, and the final version of the cathedral was completed in the 1850s. Because of this long history, St. Louis Cathedral has become home to a number of spirits. One of the most famous ghosts to haunt the cathedral is Pierre Antoine, who served there as a priest from 1774 until his death in 1829. Pierre Antoine famously baptized Mary Laveau, the voodoo queen of New Orleans, and later performed the marriage to her first husband. Antoine's spirit has been seen walking through an alleyway outside the church, named after him, while quietly singing and looking in through the stained glass windows. Other ghosts include Pierre Antoine's predecessor, Pierre Dagobert, the pirate John Lafitte, and even the infamous Delphine Lalaurie. So if you ever go to this church, be prepared to see like a ghost or two. St. Mary's Episcopal Church, Kansas City. Father Henry David Jardine, a controversial Episcopal priest, is believed to haunt his former congregation at St. Mary's Episcopal Church. Henry came to the church in 1879, when it was still St. Luke's mission. He caused controversy by introducing Catholic practices, and there was speculation about him having a troubled past. In 1886, Henry died in St. Louis from an apparent chloroform overdose, which the Episcopal Church ultimately deemed was because of him taking his own life. Because of this, he could not be buried at St. Mary's as he'd intended, and the years since his death, visitors have smelled incense where there is none, and seen a ghostly figure thought to be him looking out one of the second-floor windows. During one paranormal investigation, an electromagnetic field detector went off near the altar, and the apparition of a priest was caught on film. In the year 2000, Jardine's body was moved to St. Mary's, and his final resting place now sits below the church's altar, and you'd think he'd stop showing himself around the church, but he hasn't. Constructed between 1882 and 1885, Most Holy Trinity Church in Brooklyn, along with its adjoining school and rectory, is believed to be extremely haunted. In 1897, church sexton George Stells was a victim of homicide in the church, but the criminal was never caught. Since then, a bloody handprint has occasionally appeared on the wall leading up to the bell tower, which is kinda cool. The school was built in 1887 on the site of the church's graveyard, although all the bodies were said to have been moved to a different location. Ghostly activity makes some suspect that a few bodies remain beneath the school. Yeah, building on top of a graveyard, I don't think that's ever worked out well for people. Always hear creepy stuff happening after that. People have seen lights in the gymnasium turn on and off by themselves for years, and heard footsteps when the gym is completely empty. The rectory is also the site of paranormal activity. The bedroom formerly used by Monsignor Michael May, who died in 1895, is rarely used because of his ghost making noises in the room throughout the night. Dogs visiting the rectory have also been known to stare at the main staircase, even though it doesn't appear that anyone is there. But at least they don't drop dead instantly like before. The construction of St. Bartholomew the Great Church began in 1120. Located in what is now West Smithfield, a monk and Norman courtier named Raher was responsible for receiving land and funds from King Henry I to build the church. There's a lot of history contained in St. Bart's, including some stories that are particularly dark. A number of homicides and executions took place on the grounds of the church, including the burning of heretics. And today, several resident ghosts and unnamed entities reside within the church walls. The Duke of Argyll, the painter William Hogarth, and the apparition of a priest have been seen in the church. There's also a white mist that appears in the center aisle of St. Bart's, and some reports indicate the mist forms into the shape of a woman. The positive energy is countered by a black mist that is also seen in the church and is thought to be residual negative energy of all the violence seen at St. Bart's. The church's most famous ghost, though, is Raher himself. The monk has been seen wandering the church, supposedly looking for his foot, which was allegedly stolen from his crypt centuries after his death. Why would someone take a foot? Give that back. That is not nice. Don't steal dead people's feet. It's also said that his ghost appears on the first day of every July at 7 a.m., so that's something. In 1918, a young woman was seen pacing the steps of the First Church of Christ Scientist, located at the corner of 3rd and Ormsby in Louisville, Kentucky. More than a century later, it said her ghost is still seen, pacing and sobbing during the night. This ghost is known as the Lady of the Stairs, or Miss G, which I love. It's believed that Miss G was a member of the prominent Gothrite family, and that her parents attempted to marry her to a much older man after she graduated from high school. But Miss G had already fallen in love with a young man who is currently fighting in World War I. After the war, the soldier, who is believed to be Herbert Fulton Dixon, returned to Louisville, and the young couple planned to leave town and get married in Chicago. That night, the night they were to leave, Miss G went to the steps of the First Church of Christ Scientist, where she and Dixon regularly met. Sadly, Dixon never showed up, and passerby saw a distressed Miss G pacing the steps of the church. As it turned out, Dixon had come down with the Spanish flu and was unable to make it to the church, but the news never made it to Miss G. In a matter of days, both Dixon and Miss G had died from the flu. Miss G's spirit has been seen on the church steps ever since. Sad. It was a sad world before cell phones, right? I got the flu, can't show up, please go home, get out of the cold. As the largest Gothic cathedral in Northern Europe, the stunning York Minster is believed to date back to 627 AD. With a church that old, there are a number of hauntings associated with the church. One of the most famous is that during the 1820s, two ladies from a tour group going around the church found themselves separated and wandering around the building. They encountered a man in a naval uniform who approached one of the women and whispered in her ear. The story goes that he was the woman's brother, who had died at sea. The siblings had made a pact that whoever died first was to come back and tell the other if the afterlife existed. Another apparition said to haunt the York Minster is Dean Gale, who died in 1702, aged 26. He reportedly enjoys sitting in the pews and listening to the sermons. They sound like friendly ghosts, which is, alright. The Snagov Monastery in Romania. This island-bound church, the Snagov Monastery, seems perfect, but has a dark side. The church is the final resting place for one of the most notorious and bloodthirsty rulers of all time. Founded back in the 14th century, more than just one church has stood upon this island. The original wooden structure was doomed, eventually sinking into the surrounding lake, causing locals to believe the island was cursed. Eventually, this island was to become the resting place for, ladies and gentlemen, Vlad Tepes, better known as Vlad the Impaler, the real-life inspiration for Bram Stoker's Dracula. Vlad is said to be buried at the entrance to the church. There is a belief that Vlad had committed more atrocities in his life than any individual ever should, so he was placed at the church's entry so that anyone walking over his grave would have to take some of his sins upon themselves, which doesn't seem fair. There remains some mystery and debate whether Vlad is actually even buried at the church, but the monastery is still said to have ties to Vlad regardless, who had fortifications surrounding the island and a jail and torture chamber on the island itself. And at our number 5 spot, we have the Sefton Church ghost photograph. Alright, so in Merseyside, England sits Sefton Church, just a hop and skip north of Liverpool. Now, back in 1999, a photographer named Brad Steiger was out there, camera in hand. There was another photographer right next to him, both of them doing their thing. While they were clicking away, Steiger managed to capture something strange. In one of his shots, clear as day once again, there's a figure that looks like a priest. Not weird to see a priest in a church, but again, there were apparently only 2 people in the church at the time, neither of which were dressed as priests. No fancy setups, no eerie lighting here, just a random day, 2 guys with cameras, and a photo of a phantom priest. There's also a pub next door to the church called the Punch Bowl, which is supposedly haunted. Maybe the ghostly father in this picture heads next door to have a couple sneaky drinks now and again. Probably what I'd do if I were a ghost. I imagine it would get pretty boring after a while. In fact, I think that's what creeps me out the most about the idea of ghosts. Not seeing one, but actually becoming one. Like trapped in this eternal monotonous prison, spending your days repeating the last moments of your death, and then occasionally appearing ominously in people's amateur photographs. Something to look forward to. Number 4, St. Botolph's Church Ghost. In 1982, a photographer, Chris Brackley, snapped a photo of St. Botolph's Church, not suspecting anything unusual, but when the film was developed, a mysterious figure appeared by the balcony. This one is a bit harder to spot, but just kind of take a close look in the top right-hand corner there. Brackley swore he hadn't seen anyone there when he took the shot. The photo underwent rigorous analysis, ruling out double exposure or equipment glitches. Brackley's gear was working fine, yet the unexplained figure was there. A few years passed and Brackley was then contacted by a builder who had worked on a crypt restoration at the same church. And during the restoration, a wall was knocked down, revealing a disturbed coffin, and inside was a woman whose face that the builder said eerily resembled the figure captured in Brackley's photo. Next up, we have the Coventry Spectre. In 1985, there was this prayer meeting at St. Mary's Guildhall in Coventry, England. Members of the Coventry Freeman organization gathered for a prayer meeting. They were your typical group, all suited up and bowing their heads in prayer. Now, the odd part happened later when the photos from the meeting were developed. Among the familiar faces was an unfamiliar one, a figure distinctively dressed in a long robe. This wasn't your average attendee attire, everyone else was in modern suits and ties, but there was this mysterious robed figure in the top left-hand corner. No one in the group remembered anyone dressing like that during the meeting, and what really struck people was the height of this figure. They were noticeably tall, not the kind of person you'd easily overlook in a room. Alright, in second place we have a demon in the hospital. The story goes that a nurse working her shift at some unnamed hospital snapped this pic. She'd taken a picture of the security camera, and in the shot you get this patient chilling in bed. And, well, not really chilling, I'll get to that part later. But anyway, he's in bed, and right on top of them, there's something straight out of your worst nightmares. A demon, at least that's what it looks like. It's your classic devil type of vibe, horns on its head, legs that resemble something almost goat-like. The entity apparently popped up briefly, and what's even creepier is that just a few hours after it appeared, the patient in the bed passed away. Is this a genuine demon caught on camera? Grim Reaper's demonic cousin playing a visit, patiently awaiting to drag its next victim into the fiery depths? I don't know. Why don't you let us know in the comments. Finally, we have the Pine Hill Cemetery ghost. In Pine Hill Cemetery, a series of photographs captured by Tyler Karanasios brought attention to the possibility of paranormal activity in this quiet burial ground. What initially seemed like routine snapshots changed when he took a closer look at the pictures. As Karanasios enhanced the images, an eerie figure, almost like a woman wearing a veil, appeared in the background. He hadn't noticed anything when he was actually taking the pictures. It only showed up later. Pine Hill Cemetery in Hollis, New Hampshire has been rumored to be a hotspot for paranormal experiences. If you're thinking the figure is just a headstone, by the way, there was another photo taken during the day which shows that there is no headstone in that spot.
Number 5. Leviathan. Leviathan became a demon of darkness and chaos and a leader of hell mentioned in the book of Enoch. Leviathan is one of Lucifer's arms and one of the many faces of the devil in Christianity. He is also the representation of the sin envy. Leviathan is a tamer of beasts, a beast collector, and an excellent strategist. He has the power to summon hellish whales that are natural inhabitants of hell and use them in battle. Leviathan appears as a huge sea beast, a very powerful species of a sea serpent dragon. This form is so colossal that it's said to be capable of frightening the bravest of men and is capable of swallowing fishing boats and even ships. Its scales are several small teeth throughout its body, similar to a shark's body. Now, in his human form, Leviathan appears as a handsome young man in his late teens. Although the appearance is similar to a human, he has fish gills on his neck and his ears are pointed. He also has a small shark-like teeth that are hidden under a thin layer of skin in his mouth. Like his name suggests, he is a very jealous person, with Lucifer often being the target though. It should be noted that Leviathan's jealousy isn't limited to only him, so you should watch out. Number 4. Lucifer. Lucifer was one of the most beautiful and indescribable beings created by God, with his wisdom and beauty being described as perfect. However, despite being considered a perfect, beautiful, and glorious being by countless angels, Lucifer was extremely proud and rebelled against his father after refusing to bow down to Adam and Eve. Therefore, Lucifer is known as the first sinner, the devil, and the adversary. Now, Lucifer didn't create any angels, only God had that power, but Lucifer did trick some of them into rebelling against God and becoming his followers, claiming that he was more powerful than God and would take God's place as the ruler of the universe. They believed him, and since then Lucifer has used them to do his will. He's known for the deadly sin of pride, and he used his pride to persuade them. I will ascend to heaven, I will raise my throne above the stars of God, I will make myself like the Most High. Isaiah 14. Lucifer also sends the worst people up to earth to wreak havoc and terrorize everyone, as well as tries to tempt non-sinners to the dark side, so be safe. Number 3. Abaddon. Abaddon is considered the ruler of all demons in the 7th layer of hell, violence, and also the commander of the locusts of Abaddon. Now, what are the locusts? Well, they're scorpion-tailed warhorses that have a man's face with lion's teeth. They are commanded to torment anyone for 5 months who does not have the seal of God on their forehead by using their scorpion-like tails. So, yeah. He rules them. He has eyes as black as night and a huge mouth with many sharp teeth like those of a great white shark. In addition, he wears black armor and his wings have even turned dark. Abaddon is sometimes referred or foreshadowed as death, as they both are neutral entities of two opposing forces. He is also considered both an angel and demon with neutral and at times lawful agents of both heaven and hell. It is unknown where his allegiance lies. He's often bringing judgment upon people in the name of God, implying that he works for the Almighty. That being said, Abaddon has also caused events that God would never have wanted to happen, let alone the fact that Abaddon helped Lucifer during the war in heaven. Seems like he liked to play both sides. It's also said during Judgment Day he will gather the souls of the damned and carry them down to the place of God's final judgment. Number 2. Asmodeus. Asmodeus is a demon who personifies and represents lust, the sexual sin related to adultery. He is the demon who exists as the arch-rival of the angel of chastity, Gabriel. Asmodeus is also referred to as one of the 7 princes of hell and represents one of the 7 deadly sins, being lust. Asmodeus is a demon of lust and is therefore responsible for twisting people's sexual desires. It is said that people who fall to Asmodeus' ways will be sentenced to an eternity in the 2nd level of hell. He is also a demon of lechery, jealousy, anger, and revenge. In hell, Asmodeus looks human, however he has stark black eyes and 2 rows of shark teeth sticking out of his mouth. In this form, Asmodeus has no hair on his head, but has a muscular appearance from the waist up and 2 bat wings protruding from his back. From the waist down, he has what looks like kangaroo legs and a long dragon's tail. His horrible appearance is capable of causing fear and repudiation in humans who fall into hell, and that's the demon's intention. And coming up at number 1 is Satan. Satan is a prominent demon in the hierarchy of hell. He is known for bringing evil and temptation, and is known as the deceiver who leads humanity astray. Satan is even able to take control of the life of a person in the stead of God, though only to an extent to what God allows. Satan would appear to those who are sinful, playing into their hearts and towing them into despair. He may either be depicted as a rebel to the will of God, or as one who tempts mankind to commit sin to show God that mankind can easily be led astray from him. He is described as the ruler of the demons and the god of this age. In Revelation, Satan appears as a great red dragon who is ultimately banished from heaven by Michael the archangel. Satan is mostly known as the devil, and although the book of Genesis does not mention him, he is often identified with the serpent in the Garden of Eden. Satan is also said to be associated with one of the 7 deadly sins, being wrath, and is one of the 7 princes of hell. Number 5. Tantallon Castle. Tantallon Castle dates back to the 14th century, stands on a remote headland near North Berwick, and was badly damaged in an attack by Oliver Cromwell's forces in 1651. A photo taken there shows a ghostly figure. The photo, taken by Christopher Anachin in 2009, still remains an unsolved mystery. It's a photo of a man in what appears to be 16th century clothes. It's known that no mannequins or costume guides are used within the castle, and experts have confirmed through analysis that there is no digital alterations at play. Even skeptics have been left baffled by the image after tests confirmed no technological trickery is at play. Psychologist Professor Richard Wiseman from the University of Hertfordshire, who studied the picture, said the figure appears to be in a period costume, but we know 100% that the Tantallon Castle is not the sort of place that has mannequins or costume guides. Seems like an old spirit just wanted to take a look outside. Number 4. Nottingham Galleries of Justice. One of the best ghostly sightings caught on film is this spooky black figure photographed by Simon Brown, who is a qualified parapsychologist. He was spending the day at the old Galleries of Justice with his brother and was simply taking photographs of the building. Although Simon says he didn't notice anything while taking the images, when he downloaded them onto his computer, he noticed what appeared to be a black figure shadow that seemed to have walked through a brick wall. Staff at the galleries have corroborated Simon's story, saying that they too have seen similar figures and have experienced similar paranormal encounters, but have not yet been able to capture anything on film. They've seen ghostly apparitions, dealt with poltergeist activity, and had doors slam on their own. Simon also mentioned when discussing the figure that it appeared to be in turn-of-the-century prisoner dress, dragging a leg behind him as though he was in chains. All I can say is creepy. Number 3. New home. Buying a new house is a fun and exciting time. But what if you bought a house that you didn't know was haunted? Seems like that's what happened to Michelle midwinter. Michelle had bought a new house in England and she took a photo of it to send to her friends and family. She'd gone outside, snapped a photo, and returned to the inside of the house when she noticed a face staring back at her in the bottom right window of the house. I'm sorry, when you zoom in, you can clearly see a nose, eyes, and shoulders, and the face of a man staring back at you. Now, Michelle didn't pack up her bags and leave right away, which I'll never understand. Instead, she posted the image online and was eventually contacted by a historian local in her area who believed that the apparition in the image could have been a man known as Old Man Kent, who was thought to be a suspect in a death back in 1860. Initially, Michelle dismissed the image as nothing more than reflections and refractions of light from the flowers outside her window, but following further paranormal sightings and activity within the house, such as cold spots and lights flickering, it seems like Michelle is now a believer. I can't believe having to live in a house like that. Number 2. Bedroom ghost. In 2005, a teenage girl had just gotten her first digital camera. She was messing around, experimenting with the features, and taking photos of her friend Tommy. The two photos were taken seconds apart. The first was taken with flash and the second was taken without. When taking the photo, the photographer and her friend were the only people in the room at the time, but there's clearly another person in the photo on the right. It looks like an older person wearing glasses, and I mean there's clearly someone there. The girl said that unusual things were always happening in our family's house as there were noises and things moved. Maybe it was the spirit who was doing all this and decided to reveal themselves. If I took a photo of a ghost in my bedroom though, I would never sleep there again. And coming in at number 1 is the ghost in the water. In 2014, Kim Davidson was swimming in a lake with a friend and their combined 3 children. They went to Murphy's Hole in Lochar River in Queensland, Australia. While there, they took a photograph. Normal, right? But when the photograph came out, there was a ghostly figure of a girl behind the group who looked like she'd been leering behind the family. They said that there was nothing in between them when the photo was taken, and on close examining the image, they realized it was a white face with dark eyes and 2 horns on either side of the head. Its fingers are on Kim's shoulder and on the small girl's right arm. Kim posted it on Facebook, and upon seeing the image, many comments were made, some saying that the 2 horns looked like 2 ponytails or buns. A fellow user shared the story of Doreen O'Sullivan, a girl who accidentally drowned in the same creek in the same spot in 1913. Her obituary was found in the Brisbane Courier, dated the 22nd of November 1913. The notice reads that Doreen O'Sullivan, aged 13 years, the oldest daughter of Mr. James O'Sullivan, was accidentally drowned whilst bathing in the Lockyer Creek on Friday afternoon. Nearly an hour elapsed before the body was recovered. Now, the spot, which has always been considered dangerous, is known as Murphy's Hole and is over 20 feet deep. Upon reading this, Kim recollected that they had experienced strange things that day while they were swimming in water. She felt someone's presence behind her, but she ignored it. Twice, someone in the water even grabbed her elder daughter's leg. This made Kim believe in the presence of a spirit in the water. By looking at the picture, she was convinced that the unknown face was that of Doreen. Kim got 2 paranormal experts to check out the photo, and after investigating the photograph carefully, they concluded that the shape of the image was that of a child.
The surveillance camera ghoul. This footage was taken by a man named Mario Lara, who captured something deeply harrowing on camera in his store in Mexico. Take a look. Leading up to this video, Lara had begun to notice strange things going on in his store. He'd arrive in the morning to find things out of place, especially a piñata which would repeatedly be found on the floor, and one morning it was found in a totally different spot than he'd left it the previous night. He started to think someone was sneaking into the shop after closing and messing with things, so he set up a security camera. One night he gets an alert on his phone. The camera was detecting motion. The last thing he was expecting to see though was this ghoulish figure poking out from a pile of piñatas. It's hard to make that sentence sound ominous. I mean, piñatas, they're just so joyous. Well, unfortunately for Mario though, things weren't joyous in the shop. Things just continued getting worse. His security camera continued picking up odd footage at night, like piñatas spinning around on their own. One of his power drills, which was sitting on the floor, seemingly turned on by itself one day, nearly hitting his foot. It seemed like whatever this entity was, it was not looking to be friendly, despite being surrounded by festive piñatas. This next video comes from a woman named Mandy Mary, who spotted something incredibly creepy on camera. Take a look at this. Did you catch that? It happens very fast, but as the lights flicker, you can spot what looks to be this shadowy figure peering out from the doorway, and it's definitely not there when the lights are on. Now, why did the lights flicker? Well, Mandy's son had flicked them himself. Mandy wrote in the description of the video, "This video is from my back house. My son was behind me when I recorded this. We were creeped out as we've seen a dark figure back there many times. So thought it would be a good idea to record there at night. We videotaped and he tried to spook me by flicking the light. The moment he turned off the light, you could see the outside light from the window. Within this outside light, you can see a dark shadow figure standing there. This wasn't us. Some of the people I've shown this to said, 'It's your son.' I said, 'No way. He was right behind me, and that shadow figure was in the middle of the window, reflection, not the door we were at. So no way it was him. Every night I see dark shadows walking back and forth, making my backlight sensor flip on and off. Also, about a month ago, something shook my door so hard it shook my entire hallway." Speaking of hallways, this next person was attacked on camera by what appears to be some invisible force in the hallway. Take a look. Yeah, damn right, turn around and go back where you came. Whoever this guy was visiting, whatever plans he had at the end of that hallway, they were crossed off his list as soon as he hit the ground. What in the hell happened there? This CCTV security camera footage was taken in what looks to be the hallway of some sort of facility, like a doctor's office. Could also be an apartment, but it's hard to tell. You'll notice that before the guy even falls down and gets dragged, this black shadowy shape starts to form, and once it drags the guy a few feet down the hall, it fades back away, releasing the man who rightly gets up and books it back down the hall. This next one has to be one of my favorite spooky internet videos. Some have compared this creepy woman to a witch, others have said it may be a djinn. Whatever she is though, she's downright creepy, and this just makes for a very unsettling watch. The video was apparently shot in Saudi Arabia. It shows a man driving on a narrow, empty road. As he's driving, we can clearly spot this strange, hunched figure in the distance. The figure moves in this really unnatural way, hobbling around. It's also hard to make out where its head is because it's all hunched. It just looks completely wrong. And the man filming thinks so too, because you can clearly hear how terrified he is. He sounds completely panicked, even on the verge of tears. Honestly, his reaction is kind of what makes the video. At one point he tries to reverse away from the figure, but the road is so narrow and winding that he can't move very quickly, and the witch-like figure just keeps gaining on him, waddling towards the car with that unsettling gait, getting closer and closer, but never deciding to get right up close. It's like she's just toying with him. Unless you've been hiding under a rock for the past couple years, which based on some of the videos on this list, I can understand why you would, you've probably heard of the Serbian dancing lady craze. People coming across lone women dancing in the street late at night for seemingly no reason. Take a look at this. Sorry, not sorry. That one gets you? Look, it's spooky season now. You gotta be ready for this sort of thing. Gotta be on your toes. All right, well, I don't think it gets any more classically demonic looking than this image here. The photo shows a large winged figure. It was taken in Phoenix, Arizona by a man named Richard Christensen in 2017. He wasn't sure what he captured, and neither was anyone else. Some people think it looks like a Mothman, others think it might look like an angel, or, of course, the opposite. But, like everything on this list, what do you think? Let us know down below.
Next up, we have a photograph taken during the exorcism of Annalise Mitchell. In the late 1960s, the young woman began to exhibit increasingly alarming behaviors, causing both her and her parents to believe that she had been possessed by the devil. After a while of watching Annalise routinely convulse, hallucinate, eat spiders, and consume her own urine, they decided it was time to call in the big guns: exorcists. But unfortunately for Annalise and her family, the first exorcism didn't take, or the second, or the third. In total, Annalise Mitchell underwent 67 exorcisms throughout her life, none of which seemed to do the young woman any good. She died of malnutrition in 1976, or at least that's what they say she died of. She was 23 years old and just 68 pounds. The last image taken of the woman alive is a true testament to the torment she she endured throughout her life. And not only that, but the events of the poor woman's life actually are what inspired the 2005 horror film, The Exorcism of Emily Rose.
This is not the face you want to see in an alleyway in the middle of the night. It looks like Reagan from The Exorcist. I'd be running away crying too if I saw that. Though this guy did stick around for a while. He just kind of stared with the camera at this demonic thing as it was just kind of... yeah, freaky. I don't know where this video is from. I don't know the backstory. It sounds like the guy is speaking Arabic. Some commenters have said that this demon thing could be a jinn. Whatever it is, it's creepy as hell. Of course, it could be a hoax, but whatever. Like a mysterious video with some nightmarish imagery always works for me.
Next up, nuclear shadows. After the 1945 bombing of Hiroshima on August 6th by the United States, not much was left in the areas in which the blast went off. Somewhere around 80,000 people lost their lives due to the explosion, which went off about 1,900 feet above the city's center. When the nuclear weapon, often referred to as Little Boy, detonated, it caused the surrounding area to reach temperatures of up to 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit, which completely obliterated anything within 1,600 feet of the blast zone. Not only that, but the extreme heat caused bleaching to occur on the city's exposed surfaces like buildings, roads, sidewalks, staircases, you name it. However, in places where people stood during the blast, bleaching did not occur. Bodies would protect the surface from the heat flash as they themselves were incinerated in mere moments. To look at these images now is pretty disturbing.
Next up, we have a sleep paralysis demon. This clip was shared to TikTok by Nightmare Fuel with the description reading, "If you suffer from sleep paralysis, please do not watch." Well, too late for me. I watched it. In the video, we see a man sleeping in bed. A thermal imaging camera has been set up. The man lays motionless in bed without any context. We think he was just sound asleep, but that's not exactly the case. Turns out he was experiencing a round of sleep paralysis, but the chilling part comes in when we see something being picked up on the thermal imaging camera that we can't see on the normal camera. It looks like some sort of entity climbing onto the bed and crouching on the man's chest, which is the exact feeling people would describe having when experiencing sleep paralysis. Sometimes people will say they even see some sort of entity as well. Sleep paralysis, ain't it a barrel of laughs? I've had sleep paralysis a number of times, more so when I was younger, but every once in a while it still shows up for an impromptu visit at 3 a.m. Next time it happens, I'll be thinking of this video. So, thanks for that.
And finally, we have the rather haunting or demonic, perhaps, message left behind by William Hirons on December 10th of 1945, moments before he brutally took the life of Frances Brown. The message, written on the wall in Brown's home and in her own red lipstick, read, "For heaven's sake, catch me before I kill again. I cannot control myself," thus giving Hirons the name the Lipstick Killer. After writing the message, Hirons impaled Brown with a large blade and then wrapped her head in towels before fleeing the scene. Prior to killing Brown, Hirons had actually taken the life of another woman named Josephine Ross in a similar fashion. She had been impaled before having her skirt wrapped around her head. But in the case of Ross, her wounds had been taped shut. The last woman Hirons killed was Suzanne Degnan. She was taken from her bedroom, and 12 hours later her head was found floating in a sewer near her family home. Hirons was finally arrested after an attempted B&E, and while in interrogation he admitted to being the lipstick killer and was sentenced to life in prison. However, many discrepancies make his incarceration quite controversial, but I will save that for another video.
Alright, Anna, you gonna be alright having seen these images now?
I don't know, I might not sleep tonight. And if you can't sleep tonight, that's on us. We do apologize, but we appreciate you being here. Alright guys, I've been your host, Hannah Thompson.
I've been your host, James.
See you in the next one.